Welcome to Ultimate DIY, where you learn to be your own handyman. Have you ever wondered what it's like to actually install a wood ceiling, wood planks, or a wood wall for that matter? Well, today we're going to take this vaulted ceiling above this kitchen renovation that I'm doing right now. We're going to install cedar planks on this ceiling. And I'm not just going to install them, I'm going to walk you through every step of the process. I'm going to show you how you stain them and how you get them ready. I'm going to show you how you actually install them. There's a couple of different methods, and I'm going to show you which one works the best. I'm also going to have a grand reveal at the very end. And when I do that, I'm going to go over some of the mistakes I made and things that you can do better to make yours go in a whole lot easier. And also, as an added bonus, for those of you who watch till the very end and see the grand reveal, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. This is the material that I'm going to use. It's going to be Pacific Knotty Cedar Planking. This is a pack of 6 pieces. I literally got 36 packets of this, which will cover the entire ceiling and then some, for 36 cents. That is the absolute truth. So be sure you watch till the end so that you can see how I did it, and you may be able to possibly find a deal just like that. So let's go ahead and let's get into the basics. But the very first thing I've got to do is I've got to measure my width times my length. And you can use a tape measure like this. You can spread it out here all the way across, and you can try to read it. If you're by yourself, tape measure becomes kind of difficult. If you have a laser measure like this that puts a dot, you'll push the button. Like that right there is 1 foot 7 inches where I was holding it. It makes it very simple to measure. And I can get my measurement straight across. Now, one of the things I want to point out when you're doing your measurements, where I just measured is incorrect. You do not want to measure there. You want to measure from up at the top where the actual planks are going to go. So you're going to get all the way in that corner, push your little button, get it across there, and measure. And that is going to give me exactly 11 feet. Now, I'm not going to measure just one spot here and then one spot down that way. I'm going to trade sides all the way around, draw a diagram, and see if I've got any discrepancies or problems. That may tell me I need to buy a little bit more lumber. I may have to make some special cuts, things like that. So we now know the area that we are going to want to cover with the boards. It's going to be 22 feet long, 11 feet wide. If you multiply that, it's going to give you 242 square feet. Now, that gives me a good starting point as to how much material I need, but there's another factor I need to look at, and that's simply the layout. How am I going to lay these out? Now, if you have never done this before, you may be saying, well, simply you just start putting them on and you run them and you just keep going. Well, it's not quite that simple. I break mine, in this case, into 4 different rows. I'm going to have row A, B, C, and D. I'm going to start with A. I'm going to do an 8-footer, an 8-footer, and then I'm going to finish off with a 6. So I'll cut 2 feet off of an 8, put the 6 in. I'll take that 2-foot piece. I'll go to the next row and start with a 2, and then I'll go 8 and 8, and then I'll finish with a 4. So I'll take another 8-foot piece. I'll cut it in half, take that 4, put it at the end. I'll go to the beginning of row C with the other 4, 4, 8, 8, and then I'll take 2. When I take an 8-footer here and cut off 2 to put here, I'll take that 6-foot piece and I'll put it on row D, and then I'll go 8, 8. Now, if you notice, they're in reverse. I started with an 8, 8, 6. I end with a 6, 8, 8. In the middle, I have a 2, 8, 8, 4. I go to the row C, I have a 4, 8, 8, 2. They're in reverse of each other. All of my lines line up this way. When I get to the next row, it's just starting over again. So I go A, B, C, D, and then I go A, B, C, D again. So I keep that going all the way down. I have 0 waste. What I've got here is really a cool product. It's extremely lightweight. This is only 1/4 of an inch thick. It's 3.5 inches wide. They come in 8-foot strips. You have a tongue, which is the male side, and you have the groove, which is the female side. They slide together. And when they go together, they're going to lock into place and they make a very sound, strong structure. It's going to come in a package like this. It's all pre-wrapped. You get 6 of them, and it is going to tell me on the package that all 6 of these together will cover 14 square feet. So that makes it extremely easy to figure out my math. I know that I have 11 times 22. I've got 242 square feet. So I've got these in 14 square foot packs. So all I have to do is take 242 divided by 14, and I've got 18. That's a roundup. It's actually about 17 and a quarter packs. If you're buying these in single pieces, you're going to take your length. In this case, it'd be 8 foot. You're going to multiply it times the width, and that's going to give you a number. You take that number and divide it into the 242, and it's going to give you the exact boards. Now that 8 could be a 10, it could be 12 feet long, it could be 16 foot long pieces, whatever it is that you're looking at. It could be the 3.5 inches wide, it could be 5.5 inches wide if it's nominally cut. This is also an area where a lot of DIYers have a problem. They're looking at these butt joints and they think there has to be a stud here, or a ceiling joist, I should say. A stud if you're putting it on the wall. But if it's a ceiling, it's going to be a joist. Even if you have a break here that's just a couple of feet off and then an 8 foot starts and overlaps it, you do not have to have a piece of timber to be able to nail the butt joints in, because the tongue and groove are going to lock it together for you and give you a lot of strength. The lines are already chalked and screwed so that I know where my joists are, so it makes it easy. Now, you may be installing yours on a ceiling that's pre-existing, that has, already got the drywall finished out on it, it has a texture. So there's a couple of things here that you need to keep in mind. If your ceiling has a texture, if it is a heavy texture, you're going to either have to scrape that texture off, sand it down, or you're going to have to use a batten system where you're going to take lumber and you're going to go across and make a kind of a secondary ceiling. You're going to nail to that. You can also go over it with plywood, and then you can nail your boards anywhere you want without any problem. Now, one other thing that you want to keep in mind before you order your material, I'm going to go 22 feet. In other words, I'm going to take my boards and I'm going the long way. I'm not going to go the short way. When you go the short way, it tends to make the room look smaller and a little more, squarish. I like long because it gives the room a longer, more elegant look. Okay, we are outside. We're ready to start staining. So I told you that I'm going to spray probably 90% of this, but before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how I actually apply by brush so you can see how it works. It's fairly simple, but you're just going to take and brush it on just like this. Now this one's going on pretty easily because this is a smooth, it is not rough zone. If it was rough zone, you would have to do quite a bit more. Now I'm paying close attention to my edges. Remember, that's going to be the biggest problem that you're going to have. Just like that. And I can even go into the next one. Now the problem here is what I was talking about. So if you notice, this one's darker. So if you leave too much on there, it's going to be a lot darker than the one next to it. It's a little harder to get that uniform look when you are brushing it on. If you're wanting to store and keep this for later, I put it inside the plastic so it keeps it from drying out. Now what I'm doing is I'm spreading them out and trying to leave a little bit of an air gap so that spray can get the edges. All right guys, you're going to want to get the brush because you're going to back brush everything. Now I'm not going to put the mask on this first spray just so that I can talk, but you're going to start kind of off on one end and work your way across in single motions, trying not to trigger more than you have to, because when you trigger, you tend to splatter. So let's start that. I'm going to start over here. All right, we've got quite a bit on there. Now we're going to back brush it. Now keep in mind, this is a semi-transparent. You are supposed to have some white that is going to show through. All 6 sides. I've got this side, back side, this side, and both butt joints are all stained and ready to rock and roll. So I was going to use a 2.5-inch nail with a 15 gauge pneumatic trim gun. Well, what it does is it just blows holes through it. What we are going to do, the manufacturer suggests 1-inch nails, so we are going to do 1-inch panel board trim nails. What this is this is the same nail that you use to put in paneling, like the stuff that was put in a lot back in the 70s. That's what this is for. And I have picked a brown one. Like I said, in that 1-inch, the brown is going to blend very well. We were going to try to blind nail into the little tongue parts of the boards. Well, as it is, or as it would be, these are 1/4 of an inch thick, which means that area is even much thinner. And you just break that off every time you try to put a nail in it. It is so thin. If you've watched my video on installing a pine wall accent, which had 3/4 inch boards, that was extremely easy to use a nail gun and to shoot those nails in. I'm going to have to hand nail these in. Now, if you are not familiar with construction tools, there's a big difference in these two hammers. This is a framing hammer. It has a waffled head on it. It's waffled so it helps it kind of hit and hold on to the nail as you're driving home framing nails. It is for rough carpentry. This is a trim hammer, has a very smooth head on it, and it is very lightweight, which is great if you're hammering things overhead. But what that smooth head does is if I miss and I hit the wood, it's not going to put a waffled imprint on my wood like this will. We are going to use the PL 375 Loctite. This is the bigger container. This is 28 fluid ounces, so it's going to go a lot longer. Now, we don't have to coat the entire side of one of these. We're just going to run a quick bead right down the middle. Does not have to be a lot. With the nails, with the bead of that, this isn't going anywhere. I mean, this thing literally weighs not even probably 1/4 of a pound, if even that. I mean, it's nothing. There is no weight. It's a feather. We are going to put trim all the way around probably, and I haven't decided yet if I'm going to still do that crown. I may just take some of this, rip it down the edge off, and use this as a border all the way around, and I think that may look really good. Let's stop the talking and let's get to working, and let's see if we can get this ran. So let's do that. I want to take and install it so that the male edge is facing me from my first row. So in other words, the female is going to go against the wall. You can technically start it either way or any way that you want. I tend to prefer that way. I think it looks better, especially on larger pieces of material. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it and see if I can see if one of the sides are better than the other. This one looks pretty equal, both sides. I think this side might be a little nicer, so we're going to go ahead and put our glue here. Now, like I said, we don't have to go crazy here. We just want to put a quick bead, just like that. And you can wave it a little. This way it makes sure that you get it everywhere you need to. When you get done with these, push the little lever back. It releases the pressure so you don't end up with glue everywhere. Get it up against the wall. Now this is a part where if you want, you can leave a little bit of a gap here. Same thing with all your butt joint so that it allows for expansion. Now this is going to be the tricky part because of the nail gun. It's a little easier, and I might have been able to start these nails on the floor. But we're going to hold it right here and see if we can get a nail in started. And so if you notice where I nailed that I have my screws, that means I have a joist there. So we're going to go down to the next one. There we go. All right. Right there. Now granted, the first one is going to be much harder. Your next one, you'll have something to kind of hold to, which is going to make this a whole lot easier. You can put the butt joint tight together, or you can leave a little gap. Because I'm here in Texas and I have a lot of humidity here, and we are at the humid time and this is acclimated, I'm going to go and have mine tight. Because if anything, come dry season, it will try to shrink up a little bit. So I'm probably already at the max right now. Now be sure you're pushing up and getting it in that glue. The next one should be a little easier because you're going to have the tongue and groove part. You're going to slide into these, and that's going to help it hold into place while I start putting in nails, hopefully. Now we did an 8, a 6. Now remember, we took an 8 foot, we cut off 2 feet, put that 6 down there. Now we are going to take the 2 foot, so we have no waste, and we are going to bring it down here. And we are going to simply put it into place. All right, guys, that one went in really easily. We've got the 2 nails, the glue, everything's nice. So now we're going to try the long one. That's going to tell us how hard it is to get these grooves in. So there we go. And see if we can get that to start. It looks like I may have to do that. Well, we have a little bit of a kind of a bow here in the ceiling, guys, and this one is giving me a bit of a fit. It's going in pretty good, but we have a little bit that needs to go further, so we're going to use a little sacrificial wood here and see if we can tap it. Right there. That looks good. All right, so now we're going to move to the next one. Okay, so our first row is going to have 2 full 8 footers, and we're going to have a 6. We're going to cut it at 6, carry the 2 to the front of the other one. A point I want to make here is you have a kerf on this blade. The thickness of the actual blade itself right here. So I want to cut my cuts the same every time so that my lines line up exact and they're not off even a little. If you're wanting to be really accurate and look really great, you're going to want to pay attention to that. So I'm going to make my mark here. Now I don't have to use a straight edge and make a solid line because this is a chop saw. I just need to cut on that line. Now when I bring it down, I'm going to go to just the actual right of my line. You can see it right there. And I'm going to do that on every cut so my lines are perfect. Yeah, move just a little, get it right there. There we go. All right, so now these are the first two cuts that you just saw me make. One thing I want to point out is we've treated the ends of these. This should be our treated end. You can see that it's dark. This is the end now that's been cut. It's going to be very light. This is going to have a treated end and a very light end. So this is my little treating station here. And all I'm going to do is take a brush, get some of the stain on it, and cover those ends. Make it very protected. The ends themselves tend to be one of those areas where moisture will penetrate and cause all kinds of havoc. So you definitely want to treat those. Cutting out around the outlets is pretty simple, especially square ones like this. If it's a light fixture, you're going to need to cut a curve. You're going to want to use something like a jigsaw, something that makes it easy to make those curves. This one, though, will be relatively simple because it's square. All I'm going to do is remove the little screws that hold everything in, just like this. There we go, and this should just come right off. There it is. So like I mentioned before we pulled it off, it's going to be square, very simple. We are going to take our material. Now the first pass I've got here is going to be on the inside. The next one will be slightly over it, so I'll have to do a little bit of a jigsaw cut. But the thing I want to point out to you guys is where a lot of people mess up. They're going to bring this over, like say to this point, in the middle, make a straight cut, start up with a new one and go. And they don't think about the butt joints. You want to keep this in the same orientation. So if I have a long piece that's 8 foot that I know that goes here and it's going to go over, I could simply make a mark on each side, cut that piece out and continue on. Or you can take a tape measure if you feel comfortable doing that and measure and make sure that you have it right that way. It really depends on your skill set, but what you want to make sure of is that your butt joints end up in the same place past your opening. The rip cut, which is right here, is going to be a cut going this way. So the 11 foot, when I come over, is not quite a full piece. It is actually going to be, I need a piece that's 2.5 inches thick. So there's two ways I can do this. A lot of guys like to have it equal on each side. It's kind of like doing tile. You like to have it equal. So what they're going to do is they're going to do a 1 1/4 and a 1 1/4 on each side. So they'll start with a 1 1/4 and they'll end with a 1 1/4. I kind of want the bigger piece. I really don't want two small pieces. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to start on this side, which has all of my appliances, with a full piece. I'll end up over here with that rip piece. All right, guys, so this is a 8-foot piece. I've ripped it into 2 4s. We've got it ripped to 3 inches. Do not forget to go ahead and treat the edges. So this long edge is going to have to be treated right here along with the butt edge. So we are going to butt it up to the other one and slide in. That one slid very good. Perfect. Very easy. Tried to mention to you guys before to be sure you check the discount aisles at the big box stores, especially Home Depot, because after it's been on sale for a long time, they will mark it down to practically nothing, giving it away. I found these in the back of the store on an actual shelf, and they had been marked down, and they were marked down quite a ways, but not what I ultimately got it for, because once you get past a certain day mark on being marked down, they mark it down to a penny. So I bought 36 packets of these for a penny each, meaning I spent 36 cents. This ceiling would have cost me probably $800 or so in lumber to be able to put up there, maybe even a little more depending on the lumber that I picked. 36 cents. So keep that in mind. Be sure you're shopping those aisles and looking really closely at them. Even though this one wasn't marked a penny, it was marked down to like 50% off. But when you go and scan it, it's going to show that it was marked down for X amount of time, and it's actually a penny a pack. So great to know. Be sure you keep your eyes open on that. Oh, do you hear that? So how do you spell pane? C-E-D-A-R. Cedar ceiling. That is pane. At least it's pane with this particular material, the 1/4 inch. Now I will tell you, everything installed great. I only threw the hammer a few times, and it looks fantastic. Now I am very glad that we did the 3/4 rough sewn trim around the outside and did not do the crown molding that I was talking about doing. I think it looks fantastic. But let's go ahead, before I give you the grand tour, the grand reveal, let's go over a couple of things I learned on this project that may make it easier for you. Number one, that I did not mention, you will notice you have all of the little knot places in cedar. That's what makes it look really pretty, especially when it is stained. You've got your grain and you have the knots. The problem with the knots, especially on the ceiling, is gravity can make those fall out and end up on your floor. So when you are applying your glue, make sure that you are going that little strip as you go down it, make sure that you are covering those knot holes. If you do that, that way it will lock those into place and be much harder for those to ever fall out in the future, and you have a big knot hole in your ceiling. Now, one of the things I did mention earlier that is very important, go ahead and use a level and check for any bumps in your ceiling. If you have those, float those out. It will make your life so much easier, because this stuff is so pliable and it bends that it tries to bend around those, but it is hard to get them to connect together when you do that. So if you do that, it is going to make your life a whole lot easier. Be sure that you are staining all 6 sides. It definitely helps. And you don't have to be perfect on that stain, because when you come back at the very end and you do your final stain, it will look fantastic. Make sure that any places you cut, that you are putting stain on them. Now, as far as actual installation goes, everything went great all the way across. When I got to the end, I was a little bit worried, thought I was going to have to rip off parts of the tongue and groove areas to make it work. It did not have to do that. I was able to use that tongue and groove method all the way to the very end. When you get to the very last row, give yourself maybe quarter of an inch so that you can reach behind it with a pry bar or your fingers and pull it so that you can get everything snapped together. And by the way, I did find at the very end, pulling them into the other was actually easier, and I probably should have been doing that all along instead of trying to smack them in, pushing them. The pulling seemed to work really well. If you can get a helper, use a helper. It's going to make your life a lot easier on this. Be sure you look for those specials and those sales at Home Depot, like I pointed out. Now, next week, I'm going to go ahead and be installing a great big Vent-A-Hood, a very large 1200 CFM Vent-A-Hood system for this room. If you are not a subscriber, be sure you hit that subscribe button, ring that little bell notification button so that you know about all of my upcoming videos as I release them. And I hope you got a little something out of today. And as always, we'll see you next time.